My parents refused me at my sister's wedding. 3 days later, revenge exposed their fake status. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly reports from my hospitality division. Amanda Sterling, the city's most exclusive wedding planner, sounded uncomfortable as she delivered the message that would change everything between my family and me forever. "Hi, Jessica. This is Amanda from Sterling Events. I'm calling about your sister Emma's wedding next Saturday." Her voice carried that particular strain of someone delivering bad news. "Your parents contacted me this morning. They said you won't be attending and asked me to remove your seat from the reception." I set down my pen and leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the city skyline from my corner office. 28 years old, and my family still treated me like the disappointment who never amounted to anything. They had no idea that the woman they dismissed as their struggling artist daughter was actually the CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group, owner of 17 luxury venues across 3 states. "That's interesting," I said calmly. "Did they give you a reason?" Amanda hesitated. "They mentioned something about you not being able to afford the dress code and that it would be embarrassing for the family photos." "I'm really sorry, Jessica. I know this must be difficult." "The dress code?" Of course, my parents had insisted on black tie formal, knowing full well that my cover story involved living paycheck to paycheck as a freelance graphic designer. They thought I couldn't afford a proper gown for Emma's wedding at the prestigious Grandview Manor. "That's perfectly fine, Amanda," I replied, my voice steady. "But could you tell them one thing for me?" "Of course. What would you like me to say?" I smiled, pulling up the property records on my computer screen. "Tell them that the venue owner sends her congratulations." There was a pause. "I'm sorry. What do you mean?" "Grandview Manor. Amanda, I own it. I've owned it for 3 years." The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. When Amanda finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You're J.M. Torres, the owner of Meridian Hospitality." "That's correct. And Amanda, I think we need to have a conversation about Saturday's event. Let me explain how I got here, because even I sometimes can't believe how perfectly this all fell into place. 3 years ago, while my family celebrated Emma's engagement to David Ashworth, son of the city's second richest family, I was quietly building an empire they never saw coming. They thought I was struggling to pay rent on my tiny studio apartment downtown. In reality, I was living modestly by choice, reinvesting every dollar into my growing business. It started with a single property, an abandoned ballroom on the outskirts of the city that I bought for $200,000 with money I'd made developing websites for tech startups. While my family assumed I was barely scraping by, I was actually pulling in 6 figures annually from my digital marketing company, which I ran under a different name. I renovated that ballroom myself, learning construction skills from YouTube videos and working 16-hour days. When it reopened as the Sterling Ballroom, it became the most sought-after wedding venue in the region within 6 months. The profits from that single venue allowed me to purchase 2 more properties within a year. My family never asked about my work beyond polite dinner conversation. When I mentioned picking up some graphic design projects, they nodded sympathetically and changed the subject. They never wondered why I never seemed stressed about money or why I always paid for family dinners without hesitation. By the time Emma got engaged, I owned 8 venues. When she announced she wanted to get married at Grandview Manor, the crown jewel of the city's event spaces, I couldn't resist. I bought it 6 months later through a shell company, paying $3.2 million in cash. Emma had no idea she was planning her dream wedding at a venue owned by the sister my parents considered too poor to attend. After my conversation with Amanda, I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing the wedding contract. The Ashworth family had spared no expense: premium catering, top-shelf liquor, a 12-piece orchestra, and enough flowers to stock a greenhouse. The total cost was approaching $75,000, with my venue rental making up $15,000 of that. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents were paying me $15,000 to host a wedding they didn't want me to attend. I called Amanda back around 4 o'clock. "Amanda, it's Jessica again. I've been thinking about our conversation." "Jessica, I am so sorry about this whole situation. If I had known you were the owner, I never would have—" "Don't apologize. You are doing your job, but I do have some concerns about Saturday's event." "What kind of concerns?" "Well, as the venue owner, I need to ensure all our safety protocols are followed. I've been reviewing the guest list and seating arrangements. I noticed some irregularities. This wasn't entirely true, but I wanted to see how far my family's manipulation went. What kind of irregularities? The original contract specified 150 guests, but according to your updated list, you're down to 149. That suggests someone was removed last minute, which could indicate family conflict. As the venue owner, I need to be prepared for potential disruptions. Amanda was quiet for a moment. Jessica, I think we both know who was removed from the list. Indeed, and as a hospitality professional, I find that concerning. Last-minute family drama often leads to wedding day disasters, emotional outbursts, uninvited confrontations, social media scandals. These things damage a venue's reputation. I could hear Amanda flipping through papers. What are you thinking? I think the family needs to be informed about some policy changes, effective immediately. The next morning, I drove to Grandview Manor to inspect the wedding preparations personally. As the owner, I rarely made unannounced visits to my properties, but this situation called for special attention. The venue was stunning. My staff had outdone themselves, transforming the grand ballroom into Emma's fairy tale vision. White roses and baby's breath cascaded from every surface. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the marble floors, and the sweetheart table was positioned perfectly to catch the golden hour lighting through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Emma was there with my mother, doing a final walkthrough. They stood near the gift table, reviewing seating cards. "The photos are going to be perfect," my mother was saying. "The Ashworth family will be so impressed. And thank goodness we don't have to worry about Jessica embarrassing us with some thrift store dress." Emma laughed. "I know, right? Can you imagine her trying to fit in with David's family? She'd probably show up in something from Target." I watched from the mezzanine level, where the venue's business offices overlooked the main floor. They had no idea I was there. "I still feel a little bad," Emma continued. "She is my sister." "Honey, some people are just destined for different paths," Mom replied. "Jessica chose to be an artist instead of getting a real career. We can't let her poor decisions reflect on your special day." My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Hope you understand about Saturday. Family events require a certain image. Maybe next time you can join us for something more casual." The condescension was breathtaking. These people had no idea they were standing in a venue I owned, criticizing me for life choices that had made me wealthier than all of them combined. I typed back, "I understand completely. Enjoy your evening." Then I called my head of security. "Marcus, it's Jessica. I need you to review the guest list for Saturday's wedding. Flag any attendees who might cause disruptions." "Is there a specific concern, Miss Torres?" "The host family has a history of last-minute drama. I want security positioned strategically in case there are any uninvited confrontations or emotional outbursts." "Understood." "Should we prepare for the possibility of uninvited guests?" I smiled. "Actually, yes. There's a chance someone might show up unexpectedly. Make sure they're treated with the utmost courtesy." Thursday brought another interesting development. Emma called me directly, which hadn't happened in months. "Yes, it's me. I wanted to talk to you about Saturday." "Congratulations on your wedding, Emma. I'm sure it will be beautiful." "Thank you. Listen, about the whole seating thing, Mom and Dad made that decision without asking me. I know they said you couldn't come, but I want you there. This was unexpected." "Emma, I appreciate that, but..." "No, listen. You're my sister. I don't care what they think about your job or your clothes or whatever. I want you at my wedding." For a moment, I felt a genuine pang of affection for my younger sister. Despite everything, she was trying to do the right thing. "That's very sweet of you, Emma. But won't that cause problems with Mom and Dad?" "Let me worry about them. I'm the bride. What I say goes. I made a decision." "Emma, what if I told you I had a solution that would work for everyone?" "What kind of solution?" "What if I could attend the wedding without causing any drama or embarrassment for the family?" "How would that work?" "Leave that to me. Just trust me, okay?" She was quiet for a moment. "But Jess, whatever you're planning, please don't do anything that will ruin my wedding." "Emma, I promise you this. Your wedding will be absolutely perfect. Everything will go exactly as planned." It was a promise I intended to keep. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear. I woke up in my penthouse apartment and spent an hour getting ready with the same care I'd put into preparing for board meetings with Fortune 500 companies. Hair styled in an elegant updo, makeup applied with professional precision, and the dress, a custom Vera Wang creation in midnight blue that had cost more than most people's monthly salary. I looked every inch the successful businesswoman I was, rather than the struggling artist my family imagined. At 2 p.m., I drove to Grandview Manor in my black Tesla Model S, another purchase my family knew nothing about. I parked in the owner's reserved spot and made my way to the staff entrance. The wedding was scheduled for 4 p.m. with cocktails at 5 o'clock and dinner at 6:30. I had roughly 2 hours to observe from behind the scenes before making my entrance. Amanda found me in my office, reviewing the final timeline. "Jessica, you look absolutely stunning. Are you sure about this plan?" "Completely sure." "Is everything ready?" "The staff has been briefed. Security knows their positions, and I spoke with the photographer about the additional shots you requested." "Perfect." "And my family?" "They arrived about 20 minutes ago. Your parents are in the bridal suite with Emma. Your father mentioned something about dodging a bullet with your absence." I nodded. "What about the Ashworth family?" "They're impressed with the venue. David's father specifically complimented the impeccable taste of whoever selected this location." "Excellent. Is Emma nervous?" "All brides are nervous, but she seems happy. She asked about you twice, though. She'll see me soon enough." The ceremony was beautiful. I watched from the vendor area as Emma walked down the aisle in her flowing white gown, radiant with happiness. David looked genuinely smitten, and their vows were heartfelt and personal. Despite everything happening with my family, I found myself genuinely moved by my sister's joy. My parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Dad wore his most expensive suit, and Mom had clearly spent hours at the salon. They looked every inch the successful, respectable family they worked so hard to project. During the ring exchange, I noticed my mother glance toward the empty chair where I would have been sitting. For just a moment, her smile faltered, and I saw something that might have been regret cross her face. But then the moment passed, and she was back to smiling for the photographers. The cocktail hour began at 5 p.m. sharp. Guests moved from the ceremony space to the main ballroom, where my staff had prepared an elaborate spread of hors d'oeuvres and premium cocktails. The Ashworth family mingled effortlessly with my parents' social circle, and I could see my father in his element, networking and name-dropping with practiced ease. I remained in the vendor area, watching through the service windows as my family celebrated without me. It was surreal seeing them enjoy my hospitality while believing I was too poor and embarrassing to attend. At 6:15 p.m., Amanda found me making final preparations. "It's time," she said. I checked my reflection one last time, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the ballroom entrance. The grand ballroom was in full swing when I appeared in the doorway. Guests were seated at their elegant tables, enjoying the first course, while a string quartet played softly in the corner. The lighting was perfect, the flowers were spectacular, and everything looked exactly as I had envisioned. I stood there for a moment, taking in the scene. Then I began walking slowly toward the head table, where Emma and David sat with their families. The first person to notice me was David's aunt Margaret, who did a visible double-take when she saw me. Then David's father, William Ashworth, looked up from his conversation, and his eyes widened. "Good heavens," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Is that Jessica Torres?" My father's head snapped up at the sound of my name. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, and then something approaching panic. "Jessica?" my mother gasped. "What are you doing here?" I continued walking until I reached their table, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor. "Hello, everyone. Congratulations, Emma. You look absolutely radiant." Emma stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "Jess, how did you look incredible." "Thank you. I hope you don't mind me stopping by to wish you well." My father stood up abruptly. "Jessica, this is highly inappropriate. You can't just show up uninvited to a private event." I smiled serenely. "Dad, I think there might be some confusion." "What kind of confusion?" my mother demanded. "We specifically told Amanda you wouldn't be attending." "Yes, you did. And Amanda passed that message along to me." William Ashworth was studying me with interest. "Excuse me, Miss Torres, but do we know each other?" "We've never met formally, Mr. Ashworth, but I believe you know my work. I'm the owner of Meridian Hospitality Group." The effect was immediate and dramatic. William's face lit up with recognition, while my parents' expressions shifted from annoyance to complete bewilderment. "Torres," William repeated. "J.M. Torres, you're the woman who revolutionized the luxury event industry in this city." "That's correct." My father was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. What are you talking about? Jessica works in graphic design. William laughed. Richard, your daughter owns 17 of the most exclusive venues in the tri-state area, including this one. We're literally celebrating at a venue owned by your own family member. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see other guests turning to watch our conversation, sensing drama. Emma found her voice first. Jess, is this true? Do you really own Grandview Manor? I do. I purchased it 3 years ago, the same week you got engaged, actually. My mother's face had gone completely white. That's impossible. You live in that tiny apartment. You're always worried about money. Mom, I've never worried about money. I choose to live modestly because I prefer to invest my profits back into my businesses. The apartment is temporary housing while I'm having my penthouse renovated. David looked fascinated. So, when we booked this venue, you were contracting with my company? Yes. I've been personally overseeing every detail of your wedding planning. Emma's eyes were filling with tears. You've been planning my wedding, but Mom and Dad said you couldn't even afford to attend. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. Emma, I have something for you. What is it? Your wedding gift. I handed her the papers. She opened the folder with shaking hands and her eyes widened as she read. I don't understand. What am I looking at? The deed to a house. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths on Maple Street. It's yours and David's, free and clear. Emma burst into tears. David took the papers from her, scanning them quickly. This house is worth $400,000. It seemed like an appropriate wedding gift, I said simply. My father was still struggling to process what he was hearing. Jessica, I don't understand any of this. If you're wealthy, why didn't you tell us? I looked at him calmly. Dad, when exactly would I have told you? During one of our monthly dinners where you lecture me about getting a real job? Or maybe during the family gatherings where you introduce me as your artistic daughter who hasn't quite found her way yet? But we're your family. We should have known. You never asked. In 3 years of building this company, not one of you ever asked for details about my work beyond casual pleasantries. You made assumptions and never bothered to verify them. William Ashworth was watching this exchange with obvious fascination. Richard, your daughter is one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the region. She's been featured in Forbes, Business Weekly, and Luxury Venue magazine. My mother looked like she might faint. Forbes? The 30 under 30 list, 2 years running, William confirmed. J.M. Torres is something of a legend in the hospitality industry. Emma wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her makeup. Jess, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Emma, you have nothing to apologize for. This is your wedding day, and I want it to be perfect for you. My father was still standing, looking completely lost. Jessica, why didn't you correct us? Why did you let us think you were struggling? Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer. And now I know. The table fell silent again. Other guests were definitely watching now, though they were trying to be discreet about it. Amanda appeared at my elbow. Excuse me, Miss Torres, there's a phone call for you. The photographer from City Magazine is here to cover the event. City Magazine? My mother squeaked. Yes, I said. They're doing a feature on luxury weddings. Emma's wedding will be in next month's issue. Emma's face lit up through her tears. Really? Really. You deserve to have your perfect day documented and celebrated. David stood up and extended his hand to me. Jessica, I owe you an apology. I let my future-in-law's assessment of you influence my opinion without ever getting to know you myself. I shook his hand. No apology necessary, David. You're marrying my sister, which makes you family. That's all that matters to me. William Ashworth raised his glass. I'd like to propose a toast to Jessica Torres, whose vision and hard work have given us the perfect setting for this beautiful celebration. The entire ballroom raised their glasses, and my parents had no choice but to follow suit, though they still looked shell-shocked. After the toast, I pulled Emma aside. Emma, I need you to know something. Despite everything that happened this week, I'm genuinely happy for you. David seems like a wonderful man, and you deserve all the joy in the world. Jess, I'm so sorry about Mom and Dad. If I had known... Don't worry about them right now. This is your day. Dance with your husband, enjoy your friends, and celebrate this moment. We can deal with family drama later. Will you stay for the rest of the reception? I glanced over at my parents, who were huddled together in intense conversation while William Ashworth regaled other guests with stories about my business successes. For a little while. But Emma, I think our family dynamic is going to be very different from now on. She nodded. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. I stayed for another hour, long enough to see Emma and David's first dance and to accept congratulations from several guests who recognized my reputation. The Ashworth family treated me like visiting royalty, with William insisting on introducing me to every important person in the room. My parents remained subdued, clearly struggling to reconcile the successful businesswoman standing before them with the daughter they thought they knew. As I prepared to leave, my father approached me. "Jessica, could we talk privately for a moment?" I followed him to a quiet corner of the venue. "I owe you an enormous apology," he began. "We completely misjudged you, and our behavior this week was inexcusable. Dad, I appreciate that, but—" "No, let me finish. We uninvited you from your own sister's wedding because we were embarrassed by what we thought was your lack of success. Meanwhile, you were not only successful beyond our wildest dreams, but you were also personally ensuring that Emma had the wedding of her dreams. The irony is overwhelming." I studied his face, seeing genuine remorse there. "Dad, what exactly are you apologizing for? For not believing in me, or for getting caught not believing in me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "That's a fair question, and I think the honest answer is both. At least you're being honest. Jessica, is there any way we can move forward from this? I know we've damaged our relationship, but you're still our daughter." I considered his question carefully. "Dad, I've spent 3 years building a business while letting you believe I was failing. Part of that was because I wanted to succeed on my own terms, without family expectations or pressure. But part of it was also because I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing to offer. And we failed that test. You did. But the question now is, what do we do with that information?" He nodded slowly. "What would you like from us?" "I'd like you to respect me. Not because I'm successful, but because I am your daughter and I deserve your respect regardless of my net worth. I'd like you to stop making assumptions about my life and actually ask me about what I'm doing. And I'd like you to apologize to Emma for trying to manipulate her wedding guest list. Done. All of it. Dad, I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. Our relationship is going to be different now. I understand. But Jessica..." "Yes? I'm proud of you. Not just because you're successful, but because you handled this situation with more grace and maturity than any of us deserved." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the day's events. Emma's wedding had been everything she dreamed of, and despite the family drama, she'd looked genuinely happy. My parents had been forced to confront their own prejudices and assumptions, and I'd finally stopped hiding who I really was. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Thank you for the most perfect wedding day ever. And thank you for the house, but mostly, thank you for being my sister. I love you." I smiled and typed back, "I love you too. Enjoy your honeymoon." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my mother and a voicemail that was equal parts apology and interrogation about my business empire. There were also messages from 5 different reporters who wanted to interview me about the wedding venue owner's surprise, and an email from William Ashworth, asking if I'd be interested in planning events for the Ashworth family's corporate functions. But the message that made me smile was from Amanda Sterling. "Jessica, that was the most professionally handled family drama I've ever witnessed. If you ever want to switch careers and become a wedding planner, I'd hire you in a heartbeat." I poured myself coffee and sat down at my computer to review the weekend's revenue reports. Meridian Hospitality had had its most profitable quarter yet, with 3 new venue acquisitions lined up for the next 6 months. Emma's wedding had been perfect, just as I'd promised. But more than that, it had been the catalyst for something I'd been avoiding for 3 years, finally being honest with my family about who I really was. The woman they dismissed as too poor and embarrassing to attend a wedding had given them the most beautiful wedding venue in the city. The daughter they thought was struggling had quietly built an empire while they weren't paying attention. And now, finally, there were no more secrets between us. Well, almost no secrets. They still didn't know about the yacht I was buying next month, or the vacation house in Tuscany, or the fact that I was considering opening venues in 3 new cities. But those were conversations for another day. For now, it was enough that my sister was happily married, my parents were beginning to understand their mistakes, and I no longer had to pretend to be anything other than exactly who I was. Success, I'd learned, wasn't just about building wealth or achieving recognition. It was about having the confidence to be yourself, regardless of what others expected from you. And in that ballroom, surrounded by family who finally saw me clearly, I'd felt more successful than any business deal had ever made me feel. The best part? This was just the beginning.